Joining us now exclusively on the phone is the President of the United States. Mr. President, thank you for taking time for being with us tonight.
Well, thank you, Sean, very much. It's an honor.
I appreciate you being here. You really have not had an opportunity to react and respond to the Mueller report, the AG's letter that summarized the report, that exonerated you, no collusion after all these years, as you have been claiming. He left the decision as it relates to obstruction to the Attorney General and Deputy Attorney General. They quickly said, no, that does not rise to that level, and I wanted to get your reaction.
Well, we're very happy about it. It's gone on for a long time, almost since the beginning of my term. And, you know, if you look at it, we've done so much despite that. But it was a cloud. It was a cloud that most people didn't believe, fortunately. They spent more than $30 million, hundreds of interviews of people, in some cases very innocent people that were put through the ringer, millions of document pages, millions and millions of document pages. And after that, there was no collusion. There was no obstruction. It was such a ridiculous thing that happened. On the other hand, you know, you look at how did this start? How did it start? You had dirty cops. You had people that are bad. FBI folks, I know so many, they're incredible people, but at the top, they were not clean, to put it mildly. And what they did to our country was a terrible, terrible thing.
Mr. President, we've talked a lot on this program about the FISA abuse scandal, and this is what we know, that in August of 2016, we know Bruce Orr warned everybody at the DOJ and the FBI that Christopher Steele hated you, that Hillary Clinton paid for the dossier, that it was not verified. But still, in October, and then 3 renewal application warrants approved, they were told by the Grassley-Graham memo, the bulk of information came from that phony dossier. Even Andrew McCabe said, no dossier, no FISA warrant. There were Russian lies disseminated to the American people before the election, but it also violated the rights of Carter Page and gave a backdoor into your campaign for spying, which I know the media made fun of at the time when you said it happened.
Well, when I said there could be somebody spying on my campaign, a lot of things happened. It was like it went wild out there. They couldn't believe that I could say such a thing. And as it turned out, that was small potatoes compared to what went on. When you look at what happened and when it happened and the money that was spent, the millions and millions on the phony dossier, and then they used the dossier to start things, and there was no truth whatsoever. It was a fraud and paid for by Hillary Clinton and paid for by the Democrats and the DNC. It's hard to believe. If you wrote this as a novel, nobody would buy it. It would be a failure because it would be too unbelievable. Nobody would believe it's possible, the things that went on. And we're getting to the bottom of it, and it's got to be. I mean, you can never allow this to happen to another president. This can never, ever happen to a president again, Sean. That was a disgrace and an embarrassment to our country that they were allowed to get away with this. And hopefully they won't get away with it.
Do you now feel vindicated? Was there anything that the Attorney General's report, and I know you've called for, obviously, the whole Mueller memo to be released. Did anything surprise you? And what about the people that were collateral damage in all of this?
Well, people were hurt so badly, so badly. Their lives have been ruined, and over something that should have never taken place, an investigation that should have never happened. There was no crime. As you know, you're only allowed to do this legally if there's a crime. There was no crime. They've all admitted it. Comey, who's a terrible guy, Comey and McCabe, and Strzok and Page, the lover Page, and all of these people, they've admitted in testimony that there was no crime. So they started an investigation based on no crime. I will say this, our new Attorney General, Bill Barr, is a great gentleman, and I've heard about him for years. He's a great man. Had he been there initially, this all would not have happened, because what's gone on there is just a disgrace to our country.
Mr. President.
But a lot of innocent people were hurt very badly, and it's very, very sad, actually.
For this to never happen again, what do you think the path is to getting to that point? In other words, the checks and balances that you believe need to be put in place so that a FISA court is, in this case, is not told Hillary paid for Russian lies. Its own author doesn't stand by it, but yet it was used to obtain 4 FISA warrants that gave a backdoor to your campaign. What do you think needs to happen to prevent this from ever happening again? What checks and balances and what should be pursued or not pursued, in your opinion?
Well, I'm going to leave that to our new Attorney General, who's been so incredible, actually, and that's based on a lot of people saying this is a very, very special person, and that's what you need in that position. That's a very important position. You need so many different, you need genius, you need rationality, you need so many different levels of good. And I'm also going to leave it to Lindsey Graham. He's head of Judiciary and Senate, and a very, very good guy and a very smart guy. And, you know, I'm just going to let them do whatever they want to do. And I would imagine they don't like what they see, to put it mildly, but you'd have to ask them. I think it's much more appropriate. I purposely didn't want to involve myself in this whole thing. I wanted to let other people do it, and I wish it didn't take so long. You know, we're talking about really longer than, if you think about it, longer than Mueller. It was many months before that Strzok and Page were talking about the insurance policy, right? An insurance policy, just in case Hillary Clinton lost. They wanted an insurance policy against me. And what we were playing out until just recently was the insurance policy. They wanted to do a subversion. It was treason. It was really treason. If the Republican Party had done this to the Democrats, if we had done this to President Obama, you'd have 100 people in jail right now, and it would be treason. It would be considered treason, and they'd be in jail for the rest of their lives. But it worked out the other way, and you know, it's just really a horrible situation and an incredible outcome, or certainly very close to an outcome. And we'll have to see how it all started. But I'm going to leave that to other people, including the Attorney General and others, to make that determination. But it's very, very important for our country to know, because in 50 years from now, in 100 years from now, if somebody tries the same thing, they have to know that the penalty will be very, very great if and when they get caught.
Before I get to the media question, would you consider, sir, a pardon? Look at General Flynn, for example, or, you know, Papadopoulos, who's had to spend 12 days in jail. Is that something that you would consider at some point?
Well, as I told you, many, many people were hurt, incredibly hurt by this whole scam. It's just a scam, but it's much worse than that. It's at the highest level, and the importance is so what it meant to our country. It's a very, very dark period, and I think maybe we're shedding a lot of light. We're gonna come into a bright, beautiful, sunny day. But when you mention General Flynn, he was a man who had a incredible record in the military. You see what happened to him. The FBI said he wasn't lying, as I understand it, and the Mueller group said he was lying, and you know what he's gone through, and what so many others have gone through. I could name names that would just go on for your entire show. It's a very, very sad thing. I don't want to talk about pardons now, but I can say it's so sad on so many levels.
Let me ask you. I believe you probably have forever branded fake news, and I'm not sure if some of these companies will ever recover. You know, I talked earlier in my monologue about, well, I don't really recall them ever talking about record accomplishments, record low unemployment, African Americans, Hispanic Americans, Asian Americans, women in the workplace, youth unemployment. I mean, some really amazing numbers. But I see every second, minute, hour of every day there are attacks. I'm just going to play you a small snippet. I'm only picking one network, in this case, CNN. And just a small snippet of some of the coverage and speculation and things that have been said about you, and want to get your reaction.
Russian operatives claim to have compromising personal and financial information about Mr. Trump.
We are looking at the possibility that the President of the United States and those around him during an election campaign colluded with a hostile foreign power to undermine the basis of our democracy.
This is evidence of willingness to commit collusion.
It does look like collusion. It does look like he's listening to Putin more than he is American intelligence.
So this picture that the president is so desperate to avoid, this picture of collusion, begins to fill in.
The president sees the walls closing in and is lashing out.
He's desperate. He's obviously flailing around because he feels the walls closing in.
Mr. President, I could play an hour's worth of coverage of that for 2 years it's gone on. What is your answer? What is your reaction to the media? I know you've been very critical. Fake news.
Well, as many people have said, and fortunately we've had some incredible people that really were fair. And, you know, when you mention Rush or Mark Levin or Steve Ducey and Ainsley in the morning and Brian and Laura, Jesse, Janine. I hope Janine's back soon.
She's back Saturday.
So many people. I mean, I don't want to keep going because I'm going to leave out so many, but I could again go so long. But so many great people have been, you know, they get it. Nobody has been tougher, nobody on Russia than me. And everybody said, my enemies say that when they're reasonable enemies, when they're fair. You look at the pipeline exposing that going into Germany. You look at oil with a number one. I mean, it's what we've done with energy and oil and gas, and that's all competition for Russia. You look at the Ukraine. You look at so many different levels. You look at our military. Look at the fact that we would have been powered by wind, which wouldn't have worked, by the way, because it only blows sometimes and lots of problems come about. But we are stronger now as a country than we've ever been. We're doing better financially than we've ever done. Our markets are hitting records all the time. I have many, many records of the highest stock market. People's 401ks are doing better than they've ever done by far. It's up almost 50% from the time I'm elected president, and other countries are way down. You look at China as an example. We're negotiating a deal with China. We're going to make a very good deal with China. China is way down. We're way up. But nobody has been tougher to Russia or on Russia than Donald Trump, President Trump. Nobody even close. And yet, with all of that, we want to have a great relationship with Russia. We want to have a great relationship with China. All of these things are smart to do. We'll do great with it. But nobody has been tougher. And when I watched all of this nonsense, it was fake news, just terrible fake news. The good news is based on polls and based on other things, based on where we stand now with the public, Sean, the people never bought it. They get what's happening. Our country's doing fantastically well. More regulations cut than any other president, and that's only in 2 years. Nobody's come even close. The big tax cuts, so many things we're going to do. Incredible health care that the Democrats, frankly, wouldn't even know how to do. We're going to become the party of health care, the party of really good health care. We've done so much, and we have so much planned. So when I had to listen to CNN, which is so fake, so horribly fake, and I would just I wouldn't listen often. Believe me, I wouldn't want to listen often. But whenever I did or whenever I saw it, I've never seen anything like they. And MSNBC, the same thing. The good news is I heard their ratings last night. Both of them they dropped off the folder. Yeah. They dropped to a level that nobody could believe, because now that they see the Mueller report, where you look at their finding. I mean, the finding was very, very strong. No collusion, no obstruction, no Russia, no nothing. And it's great. And I noticed your record, you had virtually record ratings last night. So that's because you have credibility. So I want to thank Fox. I want to thank some of those people I just named, but also many others. They've been so fantastic to me and really to our country. And I really do. They're really amazing people, great people. And it wasn't so easy for them.
Mr. President, you know, one thing I do point out often, and I honestly don't see it elsewhere in the media, you did keep your promise on your tax cuts. You did set records ending bureaucratic regulation, judges, energy independence, trade deals, being tough on Iran. Jerusalem is now the capital, all those things. I want to ask you about, especially in a minute, about immigration and health care, but I want to just first run down some names and get your thoughts. James Comey tonight in an interview suggested, well, maybe he was fired for obstruction, but I just played a tape of him saying that he could be fired anytime for any reason or no reason. So your thoughts on James Comey?
Well, he's right about that. For any reason, if you look at Article 2, for any reason. But despite that, that was an incorrect statement. And when you say what I said, there was nothing said wrong there, but they didn't play the whole interview. When they play the whole thing, you see it exactly. I mean, the fact is, it would only get worse. And I said this, it would only get worse if I fired him. I knew that it was going to get worse, not better. I'm not going to fire him and everything goes away. It would be a bigger deal if I fired him, and I knew that. So it was a negative, not a positive, and everybody knew that. But NBC didn't want to play it that way. They wanted to play it a different way. And when you talk about people that are dishonest, and when you talk about bad fake news, NBC, where we had The Apprentice for so many years as one of their most successful shows, NBC is as bad as CNN. I can tell you that.
Let me ask you, Adam Schiff is saying there's still collusion. By the way, I think one of the funniest tapes I've played on the show ever is the hoax when you have a Russian talking about compromising material on a naked Trump, which is, again, talked about, and he thinks it's shown to Putin, and he's literally colluding to get information so that he can impact our electoral system. But he's still, to this day, now, prior to the Mueller conclusion that there was no collusion, none, and it was quoted in the Attorney General's report. We had a 9-month FBI investigation. They said no collusion. Lisa Page and Peter Strzok said no collusion. The Senate committee said no collusion. The House committee said no collusion. That's all before 2 years of Mueller. But yet this guy is still pushing this conspiracy theory. Thoughts on Adam Schiff?
Well, Schiff is a bad guy because he knew he was lying. I mean, he's not a dummy, and he knew he was lying. And for a year and a half, he'd go on and just lie and leak and call up CNN and others and just, I watch him, so sanctimonious, and gets on and says, oh, well, we want to talk about Russia. He knew it was a lie, and he'd get into the back room with his friends in the Democrat Party, and they would laugh like hell at what they were doing. It's a disgrace. And he knew it was a lie. And therefore, in one way, you could say it's a crime what he did, because he was making horrible statements that he knew were false. And frankly, I heard they should force him off the committee or off the committee chair. He should be forced out of office. He is a disgrace to our country, and you have plenty of others. But he would go on night after night talking about collusion, the collusion delusion. And I will tell you this about Russia. If they had anything on me, it would have come out a long time ago, probably a long time before I ran, because they would have been better off, much better off. And I hope we really get along well with them, but they would have been a lot better off with Hillary Clinton as president in terms of energy, in terms of oil and gas. Look at what we're doing with the energy. It's incredible in our country. But that's a
first time in 75 years.
So we're competition for Russia. Hillary wouldn't have let you drill. There'd be no oil. There'd be no gas. There'd be no anything to compete. Russia, if they were at all for me, and by the way, if you look at all of the things, they were sort of for and against both, not just one way. But you look at all of the different things, Russia would much rather have Hillary than Donald Trump. I can tell you that right now.
You, after the election, I remember, and I was a little surprised because I know that a lot of the crowds, and you had a lot of big crowds who chanted "lock her up" on Hillary. And after the election, you said, you know what, let's move on. Do you feel that way today?
No, not really. I did feel that way very much. The night I won, they were all screaming, lock her up, lock her up. Look, she lost 33. They deleted 33,000 emails, and they were bleach bit. That's a big deal, and it's a very expensive process, and almost nobody does it because it's so expensive. But that's the way you really get rid of them. So she deleted 33,000 emails. Can you imagine if I did that? Supposing I did that, I gave millions of pages to these people that were
1.5 million.
In one case was involved with the Clinton Foundation. In another case, Weissman, you know all about Weissman, and many others. We gave millions of pages. They found nothing. If they would have found one bad sentence out of millions of pages, believe me, it would have been front and center. It would have been front and center. But it's true. When on November 8th, 16, one of the great nights that A lot of people have had, because they came from the hills and the mountains. They came from the valleys. They came from everywhere, Sean, and it was an incredible evening. And, they've been rewarded because our job numbers, our unemployment numbers, all of the numbers that they really wanted are the best we've ever had. But I will say this. I said, let's get back on. Let's not think about the past. Let's think about the future. But now I think thinking about the past is just okay, because we can never let this happen again in our country or to another president. I'm not talking about me. I'm talking into the future. We can never allow these treasonous acts to happen to another president. This was an attempted takeover of our government, of our country, an illegal takeover. And if it were the other way around, where I was doing it to President Obama or a Democrat, it would be virtually the maximum sentence that you can find no matter where you look in whatever legal book.
Let me ask you now, I was very critical of the team that Robert Mueller put together. You mentioned Andrew Weissman. I've gone through his record. Was at Hillary Clinton's victory party. Only Democratic donors, no Republicans at all, no Republican donors. And also Jeannie Ray, who worked for the Clinton Foundation as a lawyer, was appointed. How do you feel about Mueller today? And were you surprised at all, considering the team that he picked in this particular case that seemed pretty partisan Democrat? And I thought it was extraordinarily unfair to pick that biased a team.
Yeah, it didn't seem to be biased. It was biased. I mean, it was
That's a good point.
Tremendously anti-Trump. It was never Trumpers, and it was anti-Trump, I think, in every single instance. I know that Andrew Weissman was at her, I guess you'd call it the wake, which was the big evening on November 8th. He was there to celebrate, to celebrate a victory, and he was there and not a happy camper. But these were people that contributed. Most of them contributed to her campaign. I mean, it was shocking to see it. So, I wasn't exactly sure. I know one thing. I had nothing to do with Russia, but I wasn't exactly, when I looked at the team that was assembled, I wasn't exactly sure what they would, maybe they'd take a sentence from here and a sentence from there. I had no idea. I know one thing. I was the most innocent human being, and they all said it. Even Comey said he found no wrongdoing. In one of the few times he didn't lie, because he lied in front of Congress. Brennan lied. Many of these people lied to Congress, and nothing happened. And yet, with Flynn, where they didn't even know if he lied based on what the reports are, and others, look what happened to them on the other side. But these people, there were so many lies, and lies before Congress, which is just about the ultimate sworn testimony, where Comey told so much, and he leaked classified information. Well, if somebody on our team leaked classified information, it would be years in jail. So nobody can understand what went on. Nobody really understands one other thing. When the report came out, why didn't they look at all of these acts on the other side? Why was it they only looked at our people? And now, all of that being said, the end result, it took a long time, almost 2 years, but the end result is no collusion and no obstruction. But it took a long time to get there.
Mr. President, you have the ability to release the FISA applications. There was the original application, 3 subsequent renewal applications. We are told, Andrew McCabe said, no dossier, no FISA warrant. That was a backdoor to your campaign before the election. Right. The dossier also was leaked to the Washington Post, parts of it, and Isikoff and David Corn, to the American people, and, of course, never verified. Do you have plans to release those FISA applications, Gang of 8 information, the 302s of Bruce Orr and others, and the 5 buckets that John Solomon and Sarah Carter, as they call them?
I do. I have plans to declassify and release. I have plans to absolutely release. But I have some very talented people working for me, lawyers. And they really didn't want me to do it early on. Devin Nunes, by the way, and Meadows, and you look at Jim Jordan, and so many of the people they worked so hard. And a lot of people wanted me to do it a long time ago. I'm glad I didn't do it. We got a great result without having to do it, but we will. One of the reasons that my lawyers didn't want me to do it is they said, if I do it, they'll call it a form of obstruction. So they'll say, oh, you released these documents. So we would make all of this information transparent. You know, in politics, you always hear transparency. Would make it transparent, and then they'd call it obstruction, knowing the people we're dealing with. So, frankly, I thought it would be better if we held it to the end. No, but at the right time, we will be absolutely releasing. And I did the right thing by not doing it so far. But you understand, they would call it something that it wouldn't be. It's the only time you'd be transparent where they'd say bad things about transparency.
Mr. President, due to testimony, thanks to Georgia Republican Collins, we now have testimony. One thing that shocked me a little bit last week was the testimony of Strzok and Page, where both of them suggesting that the fix was in on Hillary, and because it was every decision was being run through the AG's office. That means Loretta Lynch, who also met in the tarmac with Bill Clinton, which brings us to a higher level than maybe we once thought. Any reaction to that with Loretta Lynch, apparently, according to Strzok and Page, running the show, making the decisions for the FBI at the time? And remember the interaction between Comey and Loretta Lynch when he said it's an investigation. She said, no, it's a matter.
Well, first of all, Doug Collins is fantastic, the job he's doing. He's been incredible. I wish he were chairman, but he's not. But we're not off by much. I think we'll retake the House because they see what we've done and they see the confusion and everything there. All they want to do is investigate, and now the investigation is turning out to be something that's not very good. And Nancy Pelosi is smart. She's right in what she's saying because, to be honest with you, especially now after this great result, because I didn't know, you just can't, when you see the people that we're talking about, you just don't know that you're going to get a no collusion answer, a strong no collusion answer. But I will say, I want to thank Doug Collins. I'll also say that you start taking a look at what happened on the tarmac. A lot of people say a lot of bad things happened on the tarmac between Loretta Lynch and Bill Clinton. I've had a lot of planes for a long time. I've never stopped a plane on the tarmac to let somebody on the plane. And then they went and they talked about golf and their grandchildren for 40 minutes. It doesn't work that way. What did they talk about? And then she was exonerated. She was given one of the great free passes of all time. And I guess Bill Clinton said he was there to play golf, but I know the area very well, Arizona. It's a little warm at that time of the year for golf, okay? And a lot of people, it's a great state. I love it, but you're not playing a lot of golf right there at that time. So you have to find out what happened in the back of that plane, that so many things took place after that incident, that meeting between the Attorney General Lynch and Bill Clinton. A lot of bad things happened right after that. You have to find out. So there's so many different things, and it's important for our country that those things be determined and found out.
Last question about people, and then if you don't mind, I want to ask you about substantive issues. A couple of big things happened on immigration and health care this week. The last two, we know that Clapper lied under oath. I believe the statute of limitations, though, was passed. And in the case of Brennan, we know that there was surveillance, unmasking, and leaking raw intelligence, an increase of 350% of unmasking. Samantha Powers, who is working for the UN, asking for 300 cases unmasked. She denies it. Right. But in that particular case of Brennan and Clapper, and Brennan in particular, multiple times accused you of treason.
Yeah.
Your reaction?
Well, I think Brennan's a sick person. I really do. I believe there's something wrong with him. And I watched for him to come out of the CIA and act that way was so disrespectful to the country and to the CIA and to the position he held. And he was not considered good at what he did. He was never a respected guy. Tough guy, but not a respected guy. But he lied to Congress. And the other night, before the report came out, he predicted horrible things. So things he said were horrible. And then today, I guess he said something. I didn't see it, but I heard he said, well, I must have bad sources or bad information. I mean, this is a man who really is either sick or there's some other problem. But the way he spoke, and as you know, Clapper lied, and perhaps the statute of limitations ran out on that one, but it didn't run out on Comey. It didn't run out on Brennan or Strzok or Page or McCabe. I mean, McCabe, his wife got hundreds of thousands of dollars. He was running the FBI, and and running all sorts of cases. And his wife got hundreds of thousands of dollars from essentially Clinton's closest friend. And then he rules so favorably. I mean, he tries to say that he wasn't involved. I don't think too many people believe that. I don't believe that. But, you know, she got all those good rulings. It's really a scandalous situation, and it's so badly that it reflects so horribly. A guy like Orr with his wife, Nellie Orr, and GPS Fusion. She wrote the report and then gives it to her husband, who's at the DOJ, and then he goes and brings it to the FBI, and she's getting paid for doing it. It's incredible. The things that happened are incredible and very, very bad for our country.
Well, I hope you're right. I think we got to get to the bottom of it, because if we don't, and the media has been no help, the biggest abuse of power scandal. If I may move on to a couple of issues. Conservatives, when you had a 35-day shutdown, you were inviting Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer to sit with you. You put DACA on the table, Dreamers on the table. You wanted to quickly, they said they wanted the furloughed employees to be paid. After 35 days, you decided, okay, this strategy is not working. I was pretty confident. I think I've known you well over 20 years now, that you were just changing strategies. But we now know that they couldn't override the veto, and that means how much money now is available for the wall, and what is the status, the progress? How many more miles need to be built? How many have you repaired? How many miles? Where are we with all of this?
We've repaired, I mean, literally, many, many miles. I could give you numbers, but many, many miles. We're building many miles. We're going to have hundreds of miles are already under construction or soon to be under construction. Billions of dollars will be necessary. It's absolutely vital. If you look at what's happening at the border, it's terrible with the human traffickers, the drugs, everything that's coming across. And it goes across the soft points, which are the points without the wall. And we will have hundreds of miles built fairly quickly, billions of dollars. We took $1 billion in today, and I'm building it much less expensively than it was in the past. If you look at the past, they were talking about $25 to $30 billion. I'm building it for a fraction of that. The wall is better. It's going up faster. The Army Corps of Engineers is doing a great job working with us, and we have some real professionals. And the military has been incredible, putting up the barbed wire. Essentially, it's barbed wire. It's actually barbed wire plus. But it's incredible what they've done. You've seen it. I mean, you know, many, many miles of wire. And if we didn't have it, we would really have a problem. But we're really capturing. Let's use the word capturing. We're capturing people that are coming in illegally. We're not just releasing them. In some cases, we're running out of room. In many cases now, we're running out of room. The laws are so bad. Normally, you just bring them back, but the laws don't let you do that. Our laws that could be easily changed by the Democrats, but they are so bad and so corrupt on immigration, whether it's catch and release or chain migration or any of the various things that we have to put up with. It's terrible. So, but we're doing fantastically. We're building, in fact, in 2 weeks, I'm going to a location. It's going to be in California, believe it or not. They were begging us to build in San Diego, begging us to build wall. And we're just in the process of completing a major stretch of many miles of wall. And we're going to have a news conference there just to show people.
Mr. President,
it's really good stuff. It's better, less expensive, and goes up faster. But it's actually better than what they were doing before. So we're going to have it done, and we're in great shape. And I got great support from the Republicans, both in Congress. If you look at our congressmen and women, and from the Senate, I really had great support. A couple of them people voted against, but you know what? That's okay. They had their reasons, but we had great support.
And you will be able to use, according to the Department of Defense, a significant number of billions of dollars because they couldn't overturn your emergency declaration.
Billions. And, you know, if you go to a lot of the generals, they will tell you this is a national emergency. We need to defend our country. You have people pouring in. I mean, they are pouring. And now we're capturing these people. We're getting them. But, you know, we don't do like other countries. Other countries stand there with machine guns ready to fire. We can't do that, and I wouldn't want to do that, okay? It's a very effective way of doing it, and I wouldn't want to do it. We can't do it. But we do, if we have barriers, if we have the walls like we're building now and building a lot of people don't think we're building walls. We're building massive many, many, many miles of walls right now, and we're gearing up to do many more. We'll have hundreds of miles of walls built in the very near, built and renovated, too. A lot of it, we're able to use the old carcass of a wall. We fixed it, and we, for a smaller amount of money, we were able to build a wall that's literally just as good as new. So we've done a lot of work on it. A lot of talent's been involved, and we've had really a tremendous help. A lot of people agree. I mean, most people agree. Even the Democrats agree. They don't say that. They go into a back room, like I said before about Schiff. They go back there and they laugh. But they go into the room and laugh. Everyone knows you need the wall. The Democrats, almost every one of them, voted for the walls in the past. Mm-hmm. But now they don't, because they don't want to give us a victory. But they're hurting the country. They're not hurting me. They're hurting the country.
Mr. President, you've heard about the new Green Deal. You see the people that would like to challenge you in 2020, proposals of as high as a 70% top marginal tax rate for individuals, 90% for corporations, a wealth tax. The new Green Deal says no oil, no gas at all. We're now energy independent for the first time in over 70 years, and we are now a net exporter of energy because of ending bureaucracy and regulations. And then everything's free, everything. And on top of that, then we're going to get rid of the combustion engine, and we're going to also get rid of perhaps cows and airplanes, and we're going to build high-speed trains and just Medicare for all with no other choices. What is your reaction as you watch this new Green Deal and the comments of all these new candidates? Do you have any reaction to it?
Well, I don't want to speak badly about the new Green Deal, Sean, because, frankly, I'm afraid that they'll stop using it, because I really do want to, campaign against it. It's ridiculous. All right. It's crazy. And it'll cost $100 trillion. Nobody knows what that means. That means it's more money than you have in the world. And it will be catastrophic. It's not going to happen. It's just talk. And, of course, they'll campaign on it. They'll say, we're going to give free everything. You're going to end up being Venezuela if that's happening. We have a nice big problem with Venezuela. You look at Venezuela, it was a wealthy country not long ago, and now it's one of the poorest countries. We'll end up being the same thing. The new Green Deal is ridiculous, but I don't want to speak badly because I want them to keep going forward with it. I really look forward to campaigning. It's just a little bit early, just like Elizabeth Warren. I hit her too hard, too early, and now it looks like she's finished. I wish she would have been in the race, and frankly, I would have loved to have run against her, but I would say she's probably finished. But they have plenty left. New Green Deal is going nowhere.
Let me ask you, many presidents had promised Israel that they would move the capital from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. You made the tough decision. You got that done. I've known the prime minister of Israel personally for well over 20 years, like I've known you for well over 20 years. I've always viewed Prime Minister Netanyahu as a Churchillian figure with moral clarity that few people had on the world stage, standing alone often. And I saw that I thought it was a very big announcement about the Golan Heights being Israel's territory. As you see the rise of anti-Semitism, not just we have members of Congress that have said horrible things, but in Europe and elsewhere, and the dangers of this small country of radical Islam, I just wanted to get your reaction to the importance of Israel as our close ally.
Well, you don't have to go to other countries when you see what's going on in this country. Yesterday, I was very honored to do the Golan Heights. That was something that was promised by many, many presidents over many, many years, and I got it done. Then you look at also Jerusalem, moving the embassy to Jerusalem. For years, many presidents for many decades campaigned on it. They were going to do it, then they never did it because, frankly, it was much tougher to do than people would ever understand. It was very tough. I understand why they ultimately didn't do it. They didn't get it done, but I got it done. Not only did I get it done, I got the embassy built for a fraction, a tiny, tiny fraction of the cost of what it was supposed to cost. And now, as you know, the embassy's open. It's not just designated. It's open in Jerusalem. So, look, I'm very proud of what we've done for Israel. I'm very proud of my relationship with Israel. And what's going on with the Democrats and with the Jewish people and the Democrats and Israel is shocking to me. You know, I grew up in a world where people really and Democrats. They loved Israel. And now I'm looking at a world where many Democrats seem to hate Israel. They seem to despise Israel. And it's a tremendous surprise to me that what's going on with Israel in the Democrat Party is absolutely horrific, terrible.
I meant to ask you earlier, Devin Nunes, who's been on this show many times, and I think has been when he was the chairman of the House Intel Committee, he wrote and warned everybody. We have watched Russia over the years, a hostile regime, hostile actor on the world stage. We know that Barack Obama caught on that, microphone saying, I'll have a lot more flexibility in my next term. And then, the case of Schiff being caught on tape, colluding, trying to get information about you to impact our electoral system. But more importantly, we have known that they have impacted other nations' elections. Nunes warned this country about how hostile they are on our elections. We need free, fair elections. We do know that they attempted to influence seemingly on both sides. How do we prevent them? We have 250,000 IT people working for our government. How do we not have the ability to stop this type of hostility coming from foreign powers, hostile regimes like Russia?
Well, first of all, let me say that Devin Nunes is someday going to be hailed as a great American hero. They tried to destroy that man because he spoke up for good and just and all of the things that you have to speak up for, but most people don't have the courage to do it. He will be someday hailed as a great American hero, what he did. They tried to ruin him. They tried to destroy him. They tried to ruin his life and his family, and he just kept plugging like there was nothing going on. I mean, it was an amazing thing. As far as your other part of the question, in September, if you look, supposedly the FBI told President Obama all about Russia trying to get involved in some form in the election. And he decided to do nothing about it because he thought Hillary Clinton was going to win. So he didn't want to do anything because he thought that Clinton was going to win and he didn't want to upset the apple cart. But he knew about it. And the question is one of the many, many questions, and this is probably not as big as other questions because you're talking about major, major treason and corrupt and all of the things. But one of the questions is, why didn't he do something? He knew about it. This wasn't up to me. I wasn't president when all of this was happening. Why didn't President Obama and the Obama administration do something when they were informed about Russia and the election?
Mr. President, I only have about another minute and a half. Thank you for being so generous with your time. Will you make it a priority before the 2020 elections to make sure we have election integrity and beef up our defenses as a country so no foreign entity can have any impact? And how important is that? And the steps that you're thinking about taking?
Well, I think it's very important to know that Russia or anybody else had no impact on votes. And that's very important for people to know. And that's been coming out, as you know, from every agency and everybody that's done it. So whether they tried and how hard they tried and President Obama knew, the bottom line is they had zero impact on the election of 2016. And I'm very happy about that. That's what we're all about. We can't allow that to happen in any way, shape, or form. But we are putting very strong safeguards in. We're having many, this sounds a little old-fashioned, but the best backup is a paper backup, not a computer backup. And we have many paper backups just in case there is a problem, something which they didn't have before. But we are being very vigilant and working very hard.
Sir.
And we have tremendous systems in place, John.
10-second answer. Will you get, now that the Justice Department on Obamacare joining with the court decision, will we get that done? We only have 10 seconds.
We're going to do great. We're going along with Texas. We're winning the case, and we're going to have great health care. The Republican Party will be the party of great health care. You watch.
And pre-existing conditions and choices.
All included. We're going to have pre-existing conditions, absolutely. And we already got rid of the individual mandate, which was costing people a fortune, was terrible.
Mr. President, thank you so much for your time tonight. We appreciate you staying so long and answering so many questions. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Sean.